special cars we have in our Real Cars collection is a 1957 Ferrari Testarossa. Now, there's a little bit of story behind this. This car was the car used in Racing in the Rain. You may have seen that movie. If not, I highly recommend it, but take a box of tissues with you because it is a tearjerker. But there's a lot of good racing scenes, and this car was used in some of those. We're going to get all the details of this car from the owner, who is right here. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well.
Oh, well,
the new Corona.
elbow bump, yeah. So what's your name, and tell us about your car?
My name is Jack Wright, and I'm the owner of this 1957 250 pontoon Testarossa Ferrari. This is not an original. I wish it was, because the originals, they made approximately 21 of them between 1957 and 1958. And those 21 won most of the major races in the world back in the day. The last original that I'm aware of sold for right around just shy of $40 million. I think it sold for $38.9 million, and that was about 10 years ago. They never come on the market. This car was hand built in the South Island of New Zealand by Rod and his father and his Tempero Motors in New Zealand, and this is hand built out of sheet aluminum. They built the frame and the body to specifications, then sourced a 12-cylinder Ferrari engine, and based on the engine number of this car, we believe the engine's out of a 1963 330 GTE Ferrari. And if you want to look at the engine, we can open the hood here.
Well, certainly we always want to take a look at a V12 Ferrari engine, no matter what it's in. Here, I can get this side without letting the metal hit the paint. Hold that up.
We need to get the
And get this over.
extra safety latch there. That's all right.
And there it is. Now, what is this? Where did you say this engine was out of again?
We believe it's out of a 1963 330 GTE Ferrari. And it's got 6 dual Weber carburetors.
Now, the rocker box is painted red, which in Italian, Testarossa, redhead, that's where the car gets its name.
Exactly, and they call this the pontoon fender Testarossa Ferrari because of the pontoon fender here. The shape of this fender
Kind of stuck out, was a little bit separate from the body of the car. Now, they did that there was a change in these, wasn't there? There's pontoon bodies and not pontoon bodies. It was a cooling issue with the brakes.
Now that I'm not sure of. I know a lot of this was aerodynamic as well, which is amazing, but the bottom of this car, like the originals, is all covered with sheet aluminum, so there's no drag going underneath this car. And they understood air drag back in the 50s, obviously. So I don't know if it was probably brakes too.
Well, now these cars were not slow in the day. They hit a top speed of 160, 170 miles an hour at Le Mans.
I believe that's correct, and maybe even slightly faster. I do know that you look at the record books, and a 250 pontoon Testarossa won an awful lot of races in the late 50s. And this,
now you can imagine doing, a buck 50 down the Mulsanne Straight with your hood latched on with leather buckles.
at least it opens the proper way so the window.
Yeah, it wouldn't come up.
But
but
you can see why all the not all of them, but so many of the race car drivers back in the 50s and 60s died. There's no safety equipment in this car. It's just literally sheet metal aluminum is your protection, and just a little tubular frame, and you get in a wreck, and that's why they died.
Just from the feel of the aluminum and the thickness, I'm thinking a good swift kick would put a good dent in this.
It'll dent it, definitely.
Yeah. But what an amazing car, and a lot of fun. Now,
I drive it on the street, not very often, but I do drive my cars. I don't like to just sit and look at them in the the garage. I enjoy driving them.
Well, they're meant to be driven, meant to be run, and you've graciously said you could start this for us, because who doesn't want to hear a V12 Ferrari run?
We'll see. It's been sitting in the museum for a few weeks, if not a month. So let's see how this fires up.
A little bit of movie drama here. We're going to see a cold start on a V12 Ferrari. Will it start? Will it run? And how big will the backfires be? Well, that purrs like a kitten. Does it normally run pretty smooth?
Yes, it does. And I'll turn it off here. So
oh, fantastic.
Before I purchased this, I'm the third owner of this car. And before I purchased it, the second owner had taken the car to Patrick Otis, who is literally a world-renowned Ferrari restoration shop in Berkeley, California. And Patrick went through the car, and the second owner spent quite a bit of money refurbishing and rehabbing this car. And because Patrick had worked on the engine in the car, that's one of the reasons I bought the car. Had the confidence to buy it from Fantasy Junction. It's an outfit in Emeryville, California that consigns and sells, and actually owns and sells kind of exotic sports cars, and that's where I got this car out of. And I got the call from Spencer Trenry, one of the owners of Fantasy Junction. And Spencer indicated one of his buddies that he road races with, named Jeff Zwart, who is a world-renowned film producer and director of car scenes in movies and commercials, was involved in a project called The Art of Racing in the Rain, which is based on a New York Times bestseller by Garth Stein. And they wanted a car, and specifically Jeff Zwart wanted a 250 pontoon Testarossa to be in the movie. And he tracked this car down on the internet because he knew a $40 million car on a movie set probably was not going to be obtainable. And this is probably the best recreation out there that I'm aware of anyway, because it's hand built out of sheet aluminum. It's not a fiberglass with a Chevy or Ford engine in it. This is as close to the 250 pontoon Testarossa as someone could get. And he tracked me down. I talked to Jeff on the phone. He gave me some confidence, and I said, sure, come on up. And he flew up from the Los Angeles area. He actually had a friend drive a dog up, and I'm about the same size as Milo Ventimiglia, who is the star of The Art of Racing in the Rain. And he had me sit in the car, he had the dog sit in the other seat, and then Jeff went around the car photographing myself and his friend's dog, then went back to the movie producers themselves to see if they would want this car as he wanted the car, and they agreed to have this car in the film. I was still reluctant, but Jeff, because of his stature and reputation, he's also a car collector, and he said he'd take care of the car, and he actually got a car handler, a Ferrari mechanic, to accompany the car the entire time. When the car moved, the Ferrari mechanic or handler was with the car during the filming. When I loaned them the car, number 39 was not on the car, and I was told that 39 was on an original car somewhere, and I wasn't too sure where. Then when the movie came out, this car was pictured in a local magazine, and an individual tracked me down through the reporter that did the article about this car and the art of racing in the rain, and his name is Gordon Glyer. Gordon actually raced the original 250 pontoon Testarossa back in the early 60s. And if you look on the front signage here in front of the car at the museum, you will see Gordon racing the original at the California State Fair, which back in the day was one of the bigger road races in California on the West Coast. And Gordon actually won that race in 1961 in the original 250 pontoon Testarossa. And the original car is now in a private collector's museum in, I believe it's in Montreal, Canada. But Gordon, when he raced this at the California State Fair in 1961, you can see the picture on the front signage there. The front right fender of his pontoon Testarossa is bashed in. And I asked Gordon how it happened, and he said during practice on Saturday morning, he was racing around the streets, because they road raced most of the races back in the day on streets, and an animal ran out in front of the car. He swerved to miss the animal. He then ran over an unsecured manhole cover. That jumped the car sideways. He temporarily lost control and crashed into a hot dog stand.
Ooh.
Fortunately, it was early in the morning, and the vendor wasn't around the hot dog stand. There were no patrons around the hot dog stand, so the only injury was to the right front fender of this car, or his car, and the hot dog stand. Gordon taped it up Saturday afternoon, raced it Sunday, and ended up winning the race with a taped up, bashed in right front fender of his 250 pontoon Testarossa.
Wow, great story.
Yeah, it is a great story.
And great car. Thank you so much for bringing this to the museum, and thank you so much for your time today, being a part of our virtual membership tour here at the museum. We're going to put some links below to other things you can look up about Ferrari 250 Testarossas, and thanks so much for watching this episode, and we've got some more cool cars to talk about, so tune in again.